Hi, my name is Muhammad Zirar, and today I'll be analyzing simile, metaphor, personification, imagery, internal rhyme, and end rhyme within a poem and a song. The poem that I'll be analyzing is the English translation of the Buddha by Imam al-Busayri, which has kept the meter of the poem intact. Before we get into poetic devices, let's get an overview of the poem. The Buddha is an Arabic poem written by Imam al-Busayri, a North African scholar. In his early years, he was noted for his ability of praise. In his early career, he spent time praising kings, princes, and rulers in Egypt. At a certain point, though, he had a very deep spiritual transformation and became a student of great spiritual master and a scholar of his day, Sheikh Abu Abbas al-Mursi. There's a well-known story of where Sheikh Abu Abbas al-Mursi was sitting with three well-known scholars and disciples of his, namely Imam al-Busayri, the author of this poem, and two others. Sheikh Abu Abbas made a specific prayer for each of them. For Imam al-Busayri, he prayed that God would give him the success in writing a love poem about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. After a successful career of praising these leaders, Imam al-Busayri had a powerful crisis, and at one point of his life he became paralyzed from half of his body. During this time, he decided to write a poem as a way of intercepting to God through the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and so he wrote this poem, which is called the Buddha, which means the cloak. It's called the Buddha because at the time of the writing of the poem, he had a dream about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who came to him and heard him recite the Buddha, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was pleased with it and gave him his cloak to wear and rub Imam Busayri in his dream. When he woke up, he found himself cured from being paralyzed, so the poem was given the title, The Buddha. According to the Professor T.J. Winters from the Dean at Cambridge University and Director of Studies in Theology and Religious Study Department, he mentions that historians who look at the Buddha know that it's the most popular and influential poem in any language. He says that there are no other text that has been translated in so many languages, not just for literary elite, but also for people. It affects the hearts in numerous communities. Professor Winter says that the single poem not only has shaped the lives of hundreds of people, but actually millions. There is no significant traditional Muslim culture that has not accepted the Buddha as an honored guest, whether it be in wedding ceremonies, ceremonies of conversation of Islam, whether in calligraphy, or we can look at the Caliphal Palace in Istanbul. After the Quran, the Buddha is the most popular text on walls. One of the great ways the Buddha has shaped and lifted up the souls of Muslims everywhere is that its popularity stems from the fact that it responds so directly to the core emotion of the religion, which is the muhabba, the love for the founder of the religion, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Here's a short clip of the Buddha sung in Arabic by my friend Muhammad Shahid.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم من تذكر جيران بذي سلام مزجت دمعا جرى من مقلة بدمي.
Let's analyze the poetic devices in the Buddha. In the first stanza of the poem, the author uses end rhyme. He rhymes Dhuhu Salami, a location associated with his beloved, with steadily. It mentions, quote, "Is it from thinking of neighbors past in Dhuhu Salami that you have mixed blood and tears that flow from eyes steadily?" End quote. In this verse, the author, as common in many love poetry and many love poems, does not directly mention the object of his love, but rather uses places associated with them. As seen, at the end of the first line, he mentioned the location, Dhuhu Salami, and at the end of the second line, he uses the word steadily. This makes an external rhyme. In this same stanza, the poet uses imagery to make the reader see the picture. The poet mentions, quote, "that you have mixed blood and tears that flow from eyes steadily." End quote. In this verse, the poem makes a reference to a tradition mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, regarding the people in hellfire who will be weeping so much their tears will turn into blood. In this situation, the poet is creating an image as if to say his grief due to the distance from his beloved is like the experience of hellfire to him. In another situation in this love poem, the author uses internal rhyme, two words that rhyme in the same verse. The author mentions, quote, "From me to you, but if you were true, you'd not sincere me." End quote. As seen, the author uses the word you and true on the same verse to create internal rhyme. Therefore, this is internal rhyme. Now I'll be analyzing some poetic devices within the song. The song that I chose is Echoes by Nadir Khan. In the first stanza of the song, the author uses simile to compare his beloved like a blinding light that comes and goes. It mentions, quote, "As a blinding light you came to us, and just as suddenly you went away." End quote. As shown, the author mentions that however long you are with your beloved, it is never long enough and it feels like an instant. Now that we have seen this example, we can clearly state that it is a simile. In another part of this song, Nadir uses metaphor to compare the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to a gentle breeze without using like or as. The author mentions, quote, "And to us a gentle breeze that makes us weep our nights away." End quote. As seen, the author uses metaphor in this situation without using like or as. In another section, the author uses personification. He gives human characteristics to the universe. Nadir mentions, quote, "The universe so resonates with echoes of Sallallahu Alaihi." End quote. Here the author is saying the universe is echoing the words Sallallahu Alaihi, which means blessing of God upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. This shows personification because it's giving a human attribute of speech to the universe. Now I'll be talking about the feelings that are evoked and how the author does this in the poem and song, and also the main theme of the song and why I believe this. End poem. The feelings that are created in the Buddha is the love and yearning to be with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The author achieves this when speaking about his beloved indirectly. Without specifically mentioning him, he builds a sense that the beloved is not nearby, and in this way a sense of separation. This in turn builds a sense of yearning to be closer to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because he reminds people about the stuff that are associated with him, which makes the audience remember him and long for him. The main theme of the Buddha is love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I believe this is the main theme because the author mentions continuously in the poem how he remembers his beloved and how he weeps for him. For example, the author mentions, quote, "When grief has fixed on your cheeks canals of tears and malaise." End quote. As seen, he is sad that he lost the beloved and mentions canals of tears on his cheeks. In another situation, he shows that he remembers his beloved when he mentions places associated with him. For instance, he mentions, quote, "Is it from thinking of neighbors past in Duhu Salami?" End quote. As shown, he remembers and mentions places associated with his beloved. Therefore, the main theme of this poem is love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The feelings that are evoked in this song by Nadir Khan is a feeling of love towards the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The author creates this feeling when he mentions his characters and his looks. The author mentions, quote, "More generous there's never been, more beautiful was never seen." The author tells us that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the most generous and beautiful, which naturally makes the listener love him. The main theme in this song is the love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I believe this is the main theme because the author mentions how his life and love is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It mentions, quote, "My life is you, my love is you." End quote. As seen, the author clearly states that his love in this life is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Therefore, the main theme is love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
أم هبت الريح من تلقاء كاظمة وأومض البرق في الظلماء من إضام فما لعينيك إن قلت كفوفا هامة وما لقلبك إن كنت استفيق يهيمي ما حطني نصحا لكن لست أسمعه إن المحب عن العذال في صمامي يا لائمي في الهوى لعذري معذرة مني إليك ولو أنصفت لم تنمي عادتك حالي لا سري بمستترين عن الوشاة ولا دائي بمنحسمي ما حطني نصح لكن لست أسمعه إن المحب عن العذر